That morning was exactly like every other. The alarm clock screamed, the phone buzzed relentlessly, emails piled on top of notifications. I shot up in the middle of a cluttered room, a coat tossed carelessly on a chair, a book lying open on the floor, a desk swallowed by a mountain of "I'll get to it later." Outside the window, the sky was just turning blue, but in my head, the storm clouds had already gathered. The strange thing was, the day hadn't even truly begun, yet I already felt as exhausted as if I'd just finished a long journey. I used to think that if I just worked harder, owned more, everything would eventually fall into place, and happiness would find me. But the harder I tried, the more drained I became. Another shirt, another appointment, another goal, and another piece of my breathing room gone. I started to realize it wasn't a lack of effort. It was a lack of space to live. That's when I discovered Japanese minimalism, not just as decluttering, but as the art of living in the empty space, embracing intentional simplicity, Kanso, and cultivating harmony, When the noise in my room quieted, I could finally hear my own breath. When my schedule cleared, I could finally see the person right in front of me. And when I stopped chasing more, I started asking, what truly deserves to stay? What if having less isn't about loss, but about finally finding yourself? What if one small empty space on your desk or in your calendar could open up a universe of peace in your heart? Would you be willing to try? Have you ever walked into a room that was nearly empty, with only soft light filtering through a paper screen and a single flower branch placed in a small corner, and suddenly felt your heartbeat slow down? That moment isn't about absence, it's about breathing room. Japanese minimalism begins with that very human feeling. When we have less, we can hear what's inside us more clearly. The roots of this philosophy are woven from three threads: Zen, wabi-sabi, and Ma. Zen reminds us to release our attachments and return to the present moment, where less isn't the opposite of enough, but the very definition of it. Wabi-sabi teaches us to see the beauty in imperfection and impermanence. A ceramic bowl with a crack repaired in gold is beautiful because it has lived through time. A scratch on a wooden table gives it a soul. And then there's Ma, the art of empty space, which creates a rhythm between what is there and what is not. The space between two objects, the silence between two thoughts, the pause between two breaths, that is precisely where peace finds room to enter. That's why, to the Japanese, minimalism isn't just about getting rid of stuff. It's a way of life that knows what's meaningful enough to keep. This restraint comes from a cultural context that has always valued finite resources and the fragility of nature. In bonsai or ikebana, every single branch has a purpose, and every empty space plays a role. A traditional home with its tatami mats, shoji screens, fusuma walls, and tokonoma alcove isn't filled with furniture. It opens a path for light, for wind, and for stillness, gently reminding those who live there each day, slow down. If you compare it to Western minimalism, which is heavily influenced by modernism, focusing on function and aesthetics, Japanese minimalism goes deeper into the soul. In the West, less is often about optimizing space and reducing noise to be more efficient. In Japan, less creates room for inner quiet, for harmony with nature, and for an acceptance of impermanence. One cleans the surface, the other brightens the soul. Both are useful. But when life becomes overwhelming, many people turn to Japanese minimalism as if seeking shelter, a place where we're not just reorganizing our shelves, but reorganizing our emotions. The core lesson is this: simplify to make space for what is worth living for. When we remove the things that weigh us down, the unused item, the appointment that doesn't align with our values, the digital file that clutters our mind, we don't fall into emptiness, we fall into meaning. The empty space of Ma is not cold, it is fertile ground where simple joys can grow. A hot cup of tea, a sunlit afternoon, a conversation truly present, uninterrupted by a screen. We start choosing fewer things, but we love them more deeply. This is the spirit of Kanso, simplicity born from intentional choice. We buy less, but we maintain it well. We say less, but we listen more deeply. And then, something magical happens. Stress doesn't decrease because we're running faster, but because we're carrying less. A morning with fewer choices leaves the mind open for the decisions that truly matter. A clear workspace, free of tangled cords, helps focus last longer. When there is space in our calendar, our body has room to rest, and creativity has a chance to sprout. At this point, Japanese minimalism is no longer an interior design style. It is a gentle remedy for an overloaded world. And for me, the remedy began on that very morning. Do you remember the last time you opened your eyes and felt the room collapsing on you? Clothes sliding off a chair, books stuck under the bed, phone notifications flashing like a meteor shower. That morning, I stood in the middle of my small apartment and realized the thing that was exhausting me wasn't just my job, but the endless current of more things, more meetings, more expectations. I could no longer hear the sound of my own breath. The moment of clarity arrived in silence. I sat down on the floor, my back against the cool wall, and looked around as if seeing an overexposed photograph of my own life. I touched each item and asked myself, if I let this go, would anything of real value be lost? The answer, overwhelmingly, was no. And so, I decided to begin, not with a loud announcement or a grand declaration, but with a quiet promise to myself, to lighten the load, one small piece at a time. I started with my closet. There were shirts I kept because they were expensive, and things I bought for a just-in-case that never came. I tried to listen for that simple tokimeku feeling. Does my heart give a little flutter? If not, I placed the item in a bag, whispering a thank you for its service. It was strange. As my hands let go, it felt like my chest had opened up, gaining a little more space. Within days, my closet could breathe. My mornings were no longer a struggle. A few choices that I loved made getting out the door earlier and lighter. Next was the kitchen. I packed away the sets of glasses I never used, keeping only the one ceramic mug with a slightly rough handle. Every time I touched it, I remembered I was living slowly. The empty countertop appeared for the first time like a new shoreline, a place where I could put a small vase of flowers instead of a to-do list. I created my own little tokonoma corner, just a single branch and a handwritten card, enough to remind me of what mattered. But I knew if I only decluttered my things, I'd soon be right back where I started. I tried sitting still for 10 minutes each morning, back straight, eyes softly closed, listening to my breath come and go. At first, my mind raced like a wild horse, remembering unanswered emails and new text messages. I patiently returned to my breath again and again, like gently leading a restless child back home. After a few weeks, the silence began to take shape. I learned to pause for just a beat before replying, before buying, before accepting another invitation. That tiny pocket of ma saved me from so many impulsive decisions. Then came the phone. I deleted apps, turned off all non-essential notifications, and moved the icons off my home screen so my eyes weren't constantly being summoned. I set a small ritual. I would only open social media during a specific window of time. The rest of the day, it was left quiet, like a garden resting after a rain. The initial sting of FOMO was there, but after just a few days, I began to feel the freedom of no longer having to answer the world immediately. The house changed before I even noticed. The morning light streamed in, unobstructed by clutter. The whistle of the kettle sounded clearer. I did the dishes right after a meal because the sink was no longer piled high with, "I'll do it tomorrow." Every object had its place, and so did I. I was carrying less, but going further. One light backpack was enough for the entire day. One work schedule had empty space left for breathing. Minimalism didn't make my life austere. It returned me to a simple sense of enough. Of course, there were days I slipped. On a trip to the store, I bought a beautiful vase just because it was beautiful. When I got home, I placed it on the shelf and felt the corner of the room grow heavy. I wrapped it back up and gave it to a friend who needed one. The lesson wasn't never make a mistake, but when you do, course correct quickly. I kept a few small rituals to stay on track. A 15-minute reset every Sunday night. For every new item that comes in, an old one must leave. And before clicking buy, take 3 deep breaths and ask if this item will add value every single day. The deepest transformation wasn't on the surface of my room, but in the rhythm of my life. I began to treat my time like I treated my space. I cleared my calendar of unnecessary commitments, kept only the meaningful appointments, and left one afternoon completely open for doing nothing at all. When my calendar had ma, creativity sprouted like a young seedling. I became kinder to myself and to others because I was no longer stretched thin by things that didn't belong to me. A state of harmony, wa, was being nurtured from the inside out. If you are standing in a cluttered room right now, start with the smallest thing within your reach. Fold 5 shirts, put your phone on silent for 1 hour, sit still for 3 minutes, and watch the light move across the wall. All it takes is that first pocket of empty space, and the rest will find its way. And when your home finally learns to breathe again, you'll hear your own heart whisper, "Welcome home." From those first small steps, I distilled my own minimalist rituals for my physical, mental, and digital worlds, ones you can start applying this week. Imagine opening your front door and hearing only the quietest sound, your own breath. There are no piles of clutter about to topple over, no blinking notifications, just light flooding across a clean surface and the scent of warm tea waiting for you. That feeling doesn't just happen by accident. It's created one small, simple, and consistent action at a time. I started with something easy, my desk. I made a rule for myself that once I touched something, I had to make a decision. Pick up a piece of paper and either file it where it belongs or get rid of it immediately. No more, I'll deal with this later. In just one afternoon, the tabletop seemed to recede, giving my eyes a place to rest. When the space in front of me was clear, my mind naturally became quieter. I moved on to my closet, holding each item and listening for that tiny vibration of joy. I kept what made me smile and thanked what no longer fit my life. This practice of Kanso helped reduce the quantity and increase the quality, and my mornings suddenly became moments of clarity instead of a daily battle. To keep the room from falling back into chaos, I arranged everything according to the natural path of my body. Everyday items within easy reach, less used things stored higher up, and pathways cleared like a gentle stream. Wiping down surfaces became effortless because there were fewer obstacles, and the cleanliness itself nurtured the habit of keeping things tidy. I promised myself a short reset rhythm every Sunday evening. I'd walk slowly through the house, returning each thing to its place, like greeting an old friend after a busy week. Once my physical space was in order, I tried to tidy up my inner world. Every morning before touching a screen, I'd sit quietly for 10 minutes, listening to my breath flow in and out, wrapping my hands around a hot cup of tea and letting the warmth seep into my palms. A chair by the window became my small corner of stillness, my own private tokonoma, where I'd place just a single green sprig and a thin notebook. At night, I would write 3 very short lines. One thing I was grateful for today, one thing I needed to let go of, and one thing I wanted to hold on to. It wasn't about keeping a beautiful journal, but about seeing myself more clearly and loosening my grip on unnecessary attachments. The digital world needed space too. I moved all my apps into a single folder, keeping my home screen almost completely bare. I turned off most notifications and set 2 specific time blocks for checking social media. Anything that didn't serve my work or a deep sense of joy, I removed from my phone. The initial feeling of missing out faded faster than I expected. After just a few days, I realized I was getting back all these little lost pieces of time. A walk that wasn't interrupted, a meal that wasn't punctuated by a ping, an idea that arrived and was allowed to grow because it was nurtured in silence. Then, it was my calendar's turn. I opened my weekly schedule and asked honestly, which of these appointments am I saying yes to, when my heart is saying no? Every day, I now block out an empty slot of time, a pocket of for doing nothing at all. It might be for a cup of tea while watching the rain, a half-finished book, or simply sitting and listening to the house settle. The strange thing was, the less I crammed in, the more smoothly my work flowed. My decisions became sharper, my conversations warmer, and my creativity finally had fertile ground to grow. If you want to start today, you don't need any special tools or a budget. Just pick one spot you can finish in under 30 minutes. A tabletop, a small bookshelf, or a kitchen counter. Make the touch it once rule. Arrange what's left into an easy-to-use minimum set, and take 3 deep breaths before bringing anything new into your home. Then tomorrow, try sitting in silence for 10 minutes before you open your phone. The day after, open your calendar and cancel one appointment you don't truly need. These are tiny steps, but together, they add up to a lighter life. After a few weeks, you'll feel your home start to breathe, and your mind will stop racing, achieving a natural harmony, between your space and your soul. You'll have fewer possessions, but a deeper affection for the things that remain. Fewer appointments, but the ones you keep will feel more whole. Less noise, but the sounds of life, the whistle of the kettle, the wind moving through the curtains, will finally become clear. It isn't magic, it's the gentle discipline of intentional choice. After all the letting go, the rearranging, and the learning to sit still, I realized something. Japanese minimalism doesn't take anything precious from you. It only takes away what no longer belongs to you. When the dust of more is gently wiped away, the things that truly matter come into focus. Your health, the people you love, the work you do with your heart, and the moments you can simply live without explaining yourself to anyone. Less isn't lack. Less is enough. It's clear. It's room for life to enter. The empty space, is where life truly breathes. If you saw yourself in this story, please start gently. You don't need a revolution, just a small shift. One drawer returned to silence, one countertop with its clean lines restored, one morning without social media so you can hear the sound of your own heart. Every empty space you create is a breath of peace returning. Every item that leaves is a piece of anxiety put to rest. Do a little today and a little more tomorrow. The discipline of gentleness will lead the way. And then one day, you'll open the door and find the room filled with a soft light, like a greeting. The wind will pass through the curtains, leaving a whisper as thin as silk. On the table, there will be only a still warm cup of tea and a small notebook waiting for its first words. There will be no noise, but in that quiet, you will hear one sound most clearly. Your own life, breathing, steady and deep, and you will smile knowing you are finally home.